Alright, welcome back. This is research paper part 2. We might only need 2 parts to finish this, which would be great. Alright, so this is where we left off. We're looking at the introduction, how to write the introduction, and actually we covered was basically, okay, so if you look at the introduction, ideally that should be 1 page. History, ideally should be 1 page. Lit review is about half a page. Research questions are about 4 sentences or 3 or 4 lines long. So by the time you get to the next point, you should be around, let's see, 1, 2, yeah, close to page 3, 2.5, anywhere in that range. In the next section here, you want to basically not worry so much about what this says. What you're doing here is you're analyzing your main source. You're trying to prove your main argument, and you're going to do that in whatever way you feel is best to organize your paper. What you do want to do when you think about the body of your paper is turn to this page. Yeah, this one here. And this will go over basically, these are some different essay modes, things you might want to do in your paper in order to accomplish your goal. So ideally you want to pick about between 2 to 4 of these and build your paper around those body paragraph concepts and strategies. You do want to have a counter argument if you have a controversial topic that is required. There is actually no instruction here on the counter argument. Just return to our earlier lectures and discussions on counter argument about how to structure that paragraph, especially the argumentation lecture. And in the conclusion, it goes over 1 option. It should go over 2. I have a newer slide on this. I'll have to add that in there. But there are 2 options really for the conclusion. You can do one of 2 things. You can write a 1-paragraph reflection, which is a humanities-style conclusion, or you can do the kind of conclusion that is scaled out for you here. This is more like a 2-page conclusion, and it has a lot of parts to it, and it is a more science-style conclusion. So it is your choice as far as which kind of conclusion you want to use. Do you want to use a 1-paragraph humanities-style reflection, or do you want to use a more thorough, probably 2 or 2.5 page scientific-style conclusion? It's up to you which one you use. Let's take a look at evidence. Really the key, just like you're writing a good sentence, when you're thinking about what evidence to use, you want to use a variety of different types of evidence. So you see listed here basically all the types of evidence you could use. You could quote a whole sentence, that's called a direct quote. You could quote a part of a sentence, that's called an integrated quote. You could quote a word or a phrase, that's a partial quote. Or you could paraphrase or summarize. But the key is you don't want to do any one of them too much. If there is any one of these that are better than the others, it's number 2. Professors do like to see integrated quotations because those you're integrating quotations with your own ideas. That's very sophisticated. So we do like to see that. But in general, you like to see a variety of different types of evidence used. The integrated quote, as you see here, combines a quote and part of your own original sentence, and it occurs right here. You have this first part, which I wrote, leading up to the quote. I have a comma before my quotation marks. Quotation marks are here, and that is the rest of the sentence. And this is an integrated quote because I'm integrating something I said, like a phrase that I wrote, and a phrase from a text, and I'm making them into one sentence. Block quote is another thing you're going to want to use in a research paper. Just don't get tempted to use too many. This is only a 10-page paper. Block quotes are, in general, kind of unnecessary. Sometimes they're necessary, but I would say rarely so. They look like this. They're for very long quotes, quotes of 5 lines or more, and you want to use a particular format for those. But there's a certain reason to use these and a certain reason not to use these. In general, you don't want to use a block quote. You want to find succinct quotes, and you want to be able to phrase things in your own way. But if you can do neither of those things, if you can neither make the quote succinct or shorter, or rephrase it in a way that's better, then you use a block quote. They look like this. Format-wise, they are a little bit different from what you would normally see. In this opening clause here, it's a clause. It's not a sentence. As you can see, it ends on the verb and a colon. There's no period here. In that phrase, we have 3 things. We have the publisher, the title, and the author's name. Colon, ending with a verb in the present tense verb there, has to be that. And then the rest of it is right here. We have a block quote. Of course, there are no actual quotation marks, and the period is on the inside of your parentheses. And it goes over that on the next page. Modified quotes. This is something you can do if you want to change a quote for grammatical purposes. Oh, good. I do have this page. I thought I had this in another version. Good. So this page is here. It does cover, like I said, the 2 options for the conclusion. And this does start to go over the conclusion here. So you can either go with a 1-page reflection or with a more broken down science style. So that begins with synthesis. Now, when we're looking at synthesis, one of the main things we want to look at there are, do we have any disagreement among our main reliable sources? If we do, that can be a very interesting area to look at. If we don't, then we're not seeing as much of that really interesting, juicy stuff come out of our synthesis. But either way, that's okay. You want to look at your sources, their similarities, their differences between their conclusions, evaluate your sources, and then draw a conclusion about, if there are any disagreements or differences of opinion among your experts, where exactly does that take place? You want to have a paragraph where you address the limitations of the study. Now, in this paragraph, you want to think about, in the research paper, you're studying something very particular, right? You're studying whatever you might be studying. You might be looking at any number of things. But say you're looking at how much fuel it takes for a rocket to go from Earth to Mars, right? You calculated the exact amount of fuel, right? The answer, or your conclusion, is not going to be the same if we take your problem and change it, right? If we change your problem to, let's analyze how much fuel it's going to take to get to the moon, or to Venus, or to another planet, it's going to be different, right? The results and even the calculations are all going to be different, because we're talking about a different place, a different time, different weather patterns. So many things are going to change. It's like if you're studying something that's applicable in one country, it may not be applicable in all countries, right? There's an example here where an author does just that. They address the limitations of their study. However, early reading and writing cannot simply be measured as a set of narrowly defined skills on standardized tests. These measures often are not reliable or valid indicators of what children can do in typical practice, nor are they sensitive to language variation, culture, or the experiences of young children. So that does a really excellent job there of explaining what we're seeing and how much faith we can put into the conclusion here. And you want to have a paragraph where you address future studies. This is where you essentially think about what future scholars in this field should cover, what should be studied. When you're doing your research, is there anything that you found that was missing? If so, you want to talk about it here. Here's an example from another essay on education. The next logical step is for researchers to look at how readers and writers, as both individuals and members of a variety of groups, approach reading and writing as constructive tasks that are embedded in life situations. So that right there at the beginning, the next logical step, right? They're saying it right there. This is the next thing we do, the next thing we need to study. So that's a good example of that future studies section. And then you want to close your conclusion with essentially a typical reflection, as you would see at the end of any essay, where you can think about the future, long-term, short-term outcomes, consequences, close with a quotation that offers some deep insight, finish with a story, a question, a call to action. Any one of those would be appropriate. There is a section here on interviewing. Leave you to read that to yourself. Obviously, well, perhaps not obviously, things are going back to normal. But there are also phone interviews, email interviews, if you're not able to meet face-to-face. There's a section here on plagiarism. A good thing to do is what they suggest on, or what I put on number 5 here. Check your essay for style changes. All right, let's move on here. So citations, it covers that early on. This is just review. Research terms, these are good to look over. Okay, here's your basic MLA title page. You want to put our college here, your name, any subtitle, that's optional. Your name, the course, the number, this would be English 1, my name, Professor DeFrance, and the date which it is due. Appendices are optional. The multimodal project we'll have to cover separately. There's a section here about revision. Maybe we can try to cover a few of these points. Look for topic sentences. Make sure that your topic sentences are clear. As a research paper, we should probably start with 2 basic things. There are 2 things that stop a research paper from being at least generally passable. One, it's not long enough. Is it the right length? So in this case, it should be 10 pages. And that's not counting the title page, not counting the works cited page, just the text, right? And evidence, right? Does your paper have enough evidence? Those are really the 2 key things that make a research paper passable or not, right? Is it long enough according to the prompt? Does it fit what it's supposed to be? And then 2, does it have enough evidence? Like, does it at the very least, have 1 piece of evidence in every body paragraph? That's a good general baseline point there. So review your paper for topic sentences, review your essay map, and your thesis, as those will be gone over multiple times. Work on transitions. Employ the radar strategy in revision. And then this page tells you how to organize it. You got your title page first, abstract second, which is extra credit. The paper itself, the works cited, optional appendices or graphics, the copy of the proposed letter, and the annotated bibliography, which is extra credit. So there is our section 2 on research papers. Thank you.